What is it that makes a submission? So just maybe again, like further context. So I know that for the NAMT Festival, I think there were, what, 580 applicants last year, is that right, Sky?
537.
Yes.
For the 37th annual festival.
So just to talk about how these things sort of work, right? So pretty much any major thing, you're gonna get like over 500 applications for it. You know, some places, they actually have started to cap it. So like, for instance, I know like the Pipeline Foundation, which is just, they're like, we only have the capacity to read and give time to this many applications. So there, you know, sometimes there's a cap on the number of applicants. But usually the way this will work is there will be a sort of a first round of readers, right? Who sort of, and sometimes every application gets read by 2 different people in that first round, and it gets sort of sorted into like, these are the ones that are moving forward and these are the ones that are not. So there's that first pass. And then there's usually a second round where it's a much smaller group, and those applications will get read on a more detailed level and then advance to an actual panel discussion. So, and then sometimes there's even a further after that. So that group will say like from the 500, it will get whittled down to 50 that are read again, and then from that you might go down to 10 that are like read and discussed. So there are multiple layers. There are many, many different people involved in the process of reading through applications. And so if you sometimes wonder, why does it take so long? It's because, you know, I think organizations really want to give everyone a fair shake and have different eyes on the different pieces and see different people respond to different material. So in that process, whether it's a grant or an application for a festival or something, you know, people are, and I would also love to hear, especially like for those who read, like how you structure your time, because I know that I'm like, okay, great, I have a day to get through this many applications. I have to allocate this much time to each application. I want to make sure that I'm giving equal time with each person's application. But realistically, like by the time you get to application 40, it's a little bit of a blur. So, and I mean, that's just the human brain, right? And how much we have capacity to absorb. So in the context of that, what makes the submission stand out from the hundreds that are received? What are the positive things that make you go, great, I remember that one from 20 applications ago as I'm sitting here for days going through these on my own?
I mean, for me, I would say, yes. I mean, that is a really great illustration of this slightly insane process and a good reminder that you're gonna have a lot of different human people looking at your pieces. And people have different likes and dislikes. So the more eyeballs on that, the better, because there are gonna be some people for whom it's like, this is not interesting to me, and for some people that's very interesting. Everybody has that stuff. For me, what stands out is something that, I mean, there is certainly something about an application that feels different, that feels like it's not something I've seen before. It's probably going to catch my attention a little bit more than something that feels like I've read many, many versions of that thing. Something that really knows itself also is a really good thing. I mean, I have noticed that I'm just unpacking my baggage. One of the things that I have noticed creeping into a lot of applications, which I really hate, is marketing languages, elevator pitches. And I really, especially in the synopsis section, if you're asked for a synopsis of your show, give me a synopsis of your show, the whole show from start to finish. I need to know that you are capable of writing a lot. What I don't need to know is like buzzwords, you know, and what I'm getting a lot of these days is sort of like, in this coming of age story, you'll feel this and this. And I'm like, that is not a synopsis. I need to know, not that, like, don't try to hustle me, just tell me what your show is.
Kind of hyperbole, right?
Yes. Yeah. If it sounds like it can already go on the poster at my theater when I'm doing the production of your show, that is not helpful to me, and will actually help, like, prevent your show from getting to the point where we need to find a pull quote for the poster. What I need to know is what your show is. Tell me what your show is. So if you know your show, if your show has a really good, strong sense of its own identity, You can absolutely have a personal voice in your application too. And I will hear that and I will think, wow, this is a really strong voice coming through this. And that is interesting to me. Because, you know, what we're always looking for is a great piece, you know? And so to me, that's kind of the most important thing. Like, give the best representation of what your show is in the application. Don't try to sell us something that isn't ultimately what the show is. And if it's weird, and if it's dark, and if it's not for everybody, or if it's something that you're like, ugh, this is gonna be a little bit hard to sell, great, you know? That's what we honestly are, I mean, the Signature, we do a lot of dark and weird and hard to sell, so like, that's like so for me, I'm like way more interested in that than something that I feel like I've seen a lot of versions of this very palatable thing that somebody has written because they think that's what we want. So yeah, just give me the best sense of it, and please don't give me an elevator pitch in your synopsis. You can put it on your front page if you want. Elevator pitches are useful, sort of, but like that's just synopsis in your synopsis. Okay, that's one of my little. Great. We got some other ones.
We're gonna come back to the common mistakes.
Yes.
Also,
Okay.
so.
I wanted to add that I think one of the reasons I love actually doing grant applications for my own stuff is that it really helps me articulate the who, what, why, where in the most succinct place and in a succinct way. That helps me not only for whatever I'm applying for, but it helps me actually in the writing of the thing, because it forces me to really zero in. What is it about? Who? How? Why is it important? And so just to piggyback on what you said, I think that when you are able to do that for yourself and about your piece and translate that into the application, that really comes through. And just in terms of really knowing your piece and knowing why it matters to you, why you have decided to spend 10 or 20 years of your life on it, you know, as you will do.
It's a good self-assessment to have to write that down. Why do we deserve money? Why do I deserve this opportunity? Yeah.
I think the only thing I would add is, I think from a more logistical standpoint as a composer, and I know that this topic of like demos and sort of how to flesh them out or not flesh them out can be a bit controversial, and a lot of folks have different opinions on that. I'll just speak from my experience, which is, you know, no matter how fleshed out or orchestrated your demo is, I think you just want to make sure that it represents how you see the music, how you hear the music. And I tend to find for me that means a little bit more orchestrated only because I want whoever's reading it to not have to use their imagination all that much to understand my vision for the piece. And I don't think that means you need all the bells and whistles. You don't need to buy a million things, you know, but I think that sometimes, you know, if you're submitting a voice memo that you did in your bathroom, which I have done before, okay? That it's not quite the same experience as if you're talking about your show having a very specific sound. It's sometimes really helpful to be able to illustrate that and to be like, even if you're submitting 5 demos and only one of them has like that synth element that you're talking about, or it's a piece that's driven primarily by a cello, right? You should, maybe one of them has this element. And I'm not saying, I know that life is expensive as a writer and that's a big ask, but it is something sometimes that I think can be helpful when you're trying to get somebody's attention to say, this is what makes my sound special. I think it does help for you to be able to pass something on to them that illustrates that and say, you don't have to use your imagination too hard. This is what I'm going for. And of course, with more resources, you know, this could be more fleshed out, but this is something unique that I have to offer as a musician, as a composer, as a writer. I don't think it hurts. So.
Also, she's an amazing singer, so that